Join us for an enlightening experience where you will gain a deeper understanding of the purpose and essence of opening your eyes. This is your chance to enhance self-awareness and personal growth with a shift in perception that provides a fresh outlook on life. Embrace the journey from consciousness to superconsciousness. Coming live by Baret and I.
Here we are. Welcome, brother. We have Salvador March in our beautiful studio. Welcome, brother. It's an honor to be in your beautiful company. I just wanted to basically give you the opportunity just to give you an outline, just a brief profile of who you are and your journey to date, and then we'll go into the hot topic of what is soul evolution, which I'm really looking forward to. So I'll hand you, bruv. Just a brief profile of your background. And
well, I'm practically 70 years old. Wow. I've been training in healing modalities most of my life, since my mid-late 20s. And this went on until I was 60, at which time I retired because I wasn't good enough. I spent a lifetime wanting to be a good healer, and I found myself not being good enough, so I retired. And the reason why I wasn't good enough was because there were still some repressed emotions deep within me in relation to my mother. I'd been put in an orphanage at the age of 3. I then was moved at the age of 8 to another one. At the age of 11, I came to the UK. I didn't speak English. I had to learn English. I was lost at sea without a rudder.
Yeah.
And I blamed my mother for everything, as one does. And it took me till I was 60, even though I spent all my life working on myself, working on, I trained as a psychotherapist in my 30s. Mid-30s, I was trained to be a Gestalt psychotherapist. And I won't bore you, I've done so many other things. Always trying to connect with my feelings, with my emotions. I didn't even know what my emotions were. In my mid-30s, if you asked me about my emotions, I couldn't describe them to you. I had no idea. I really had no idea. I think it would be fair to say that I was as my psychotherapist said to me at the time when I asked him, he said, well, I think you're borderline, it's not just narcissistic. It's not narcissistic. There's another word where you're totally bereft of emotions or concerns for other people.
Yeah.
We love to use these words. I was writing about them earlier on. I can't think of them right now. Not psychopath, sociopathic. So I was borderline sociopath in his summation of me. So that was me in my early 30s. And I spent a lifetime working. I couldn't even be a spiritual healer because every time that I tried to connect with my feelings, with my emotions, with another person, there would be so much emotion welling out of me that I couldn't stop myself crying. So I had a bucket full of suppressed emotions to deal with. And at the base of that, at the root, it was my anger to do with my mother. And it took till I was 60. Well, 61, before I actually dealt with that.
Yeah.
And once I had dealt with that, once I had forgiven my mother, once I had come to terms with myself fully, completely, utterly, I then found, because by this time I'd learned another model, which was kinesiology, I then found that there is something beyond human beings. And as I was doing muscle testing with people, I became very suspicious that in the process of doing muscle testing, they were not responding to my words. They were responding to my images and my intention.
Wow.
And I then followed that, and sure enough, it was true. So that was something within human beings which I could communicate with, which we do communicate with when we do kinesiology and muscle testing. And so that was my greatest adventure began then. And I thought, well, I can't just sort of do muscle testing with other people to find out what I want to know for myself. So I then developed a way of doing muscle testing within myself that became highly effective for me, which is I use muscle testing with my hand. So it's a question of yes and no answers between my thumb and middle finger.
Right.
And it took me quite a while to develop that to the point that I could begin to rely on it to some extent. It's no different to using a pendulum, only much quicker, way, way much faster, more effective. And as I became better at this, whatever it was that I was connecting with, began to tell me how to heal myself, and began to tell me how to develop myself so that I could have greater communication with whatever this thing is. And it got to the silly point when I said, I can't just keep calling it. I have to give it a name. So I called him Charlie. And so it turns out that Charlie is one pay grade above the fragment of soul that is within each of us. So each of us, there is a soul within us, but it's not a complete soul, because a complete soul is beyond time and we are within time. And I'll explain more of that later if you want. But above my immediate soul fragment, which I call Eric, just to differentiate, there is another level of soul. And this is the one that I call Charlie. And Charlie is wiser, knows more than my immediate soul only knows a little bit. But Charlie has been around. His breath certainly goes back way beyond this galaxy. And anyway, so he and I began to have conversations. And then I found that I could work with him with clients. So rather than do muscle testing on the client, I now began to rely on Charlie to tell me what to do. And that turned out to be highly successful and extremely effective. And then over time, I found that it didn't matter where people were. So I've got clients in America, in Canada, in Europe, and Charlie is as effective at giving me the information required to help people wherever they are. So there's all these strings to what Charlie offers. But of course, Charlie also came with a message. And because it turns out that this wasn't haphazard or by chance. but rather that Charlie has been guiding me for over 3 different lifetimes to come to this point. Because to make this sort of connections with something so much greater than ourselves is not that easy, essentially because we are born into a world which is full of mindless and meaningless indoctrinations. So that, and confusion, I mean, extreme confusion. It is the world of the blind leading the blind. So many people are desperate. They're searching for truth. And there's always a charlatan out there saying, oh, this is the truth. How do you know this is the truth? Oh, because I learned it from these books, or I learned it from so-and-so, who in turn learned it from so-and-so, who in turn learned it from some other books. Occasionally, oh, well, I learned it from this person who is a psychic and who brings this information across. But what people miss is that all these psychics, like myself, are born into a world of deception. Not deliberate, well, there is some deliberate deception, but it's a world of, by and large, unfortunate deceptions, whereby we learn so many things which are not true, not in the real sense of the word. They're roadmaps towards truth, but they're not very good maps. They only take you a little bit of the way. And a lot of these psychics over the last few hundred years they've been touching onto truth. They really have been hooking onto truth, but it's only been a little bit of the truth. And the rest, their ego has made it up on the basis of their own indoctrinations, on the basis of what they themselves have learned from others. And so it has colored the information the real information that has come through to them is nevertheless colored by their egos, by their own indoctrinations, their own learnings, their own studies. And this is the difficulty that we face today. And so today we've got so many spiritual groups, so many religious groups, so many different belief systems, all trying to find out what is truth. And we need to find out what is truth. But the truth is in ourselves. The truth is not truly out there. I mean, as I connect with something else, but nevertheless, the truth is not out there. The truth is in ourselves. And the truth is that there is a soul within each of us, fragment of soul, and that the only chance we have of engaging with this soul is through our hearts. And this is what happened to me. Once I had let go of my anger towards my mother, that was the final piece of the puzzle. Once I had truly let go, my heart was able to open up. And in the process, soul communion happened. And the reason why Charlie has been helping me through three different lifetimes to now is because the hardest thing for a human being, however evolved one might think themselves to be, is to escape. It's a bit like being a human being. You want to go to the moon, you got to escape gravity.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to move beyond the Van Allen belt and you need a lot of power, a lot of force to get that rocket to escape that gravity. Once you escape it, it's easy. And this is where human beings are. It is really hard for us, being raised in such ignorance, being raised by people who themselves are ignorant, not deliberately, but it's just how it is, being raised in brutality. I was brutalized. You know, when I was a young lad, I was brutalized by priests. Most of us are brutalized. I was brutalized by other people as well. But, you know, there were various people who brutalized me, and it had a huge impact on my psyche. And all of that damage that happens to us when young is really, really hard to escape from. This is why it took me so long, because I had so much damage. However, that was the previous lifetimes. They were all about suffering. And what allows us to move beyond this, we actually have to experience a lot of suffering. People struggle with that to truly move, to gain that velocity, to escape beyond the ego, we do need to suffer a lot. Now, suffering is a relative term. And when I speak of suffering, I'm actually speaking about our capacity to experience emotional intensity, as well as mental conflicts. We need to be able to have different belief systems in our heads, and we need to be able to detach ourselves to say, okay, right, left, right, I can't do this, I'm not going here, I'm not going there. We need to be able to stay there. It's only through experiencing conflict, intensity, emotional intensity and mental conflict, that we build up voltage within our nervous system to reach escape velocity. Unless we can move beyond the ego, we don't stand a chance. But to escape the ego, we need to really experience emotional and mental pain. Physical pain is not required to escape the ego, but physical pain happens because of the conflict between our mind and our emotions, which in turn affect the body. So when I say that we need to experience pain, I'm only referring to mental and emotional, not the physical. Yeah. Although inevitably, with that conflict of mental and emotional, we end up having the physical. Yeah. Okay.
Would you say there is, for some, a breaking point where the struggle can be so overwhelming? I mean, you use a beautiful word called, where you're using the word brutalized, but
brutalized,
another word could be like traumatized as well.
Traumatized, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think that some people, I mean, we don't need to go into statistics, but a high percentage of people, do you feel that they can come out of this brutality?
Okay. Or many are called and few are chosen. It's a quote from the Bible, right? And there is truth in that. And that has been truth up till now. In human history, that has been the truth. Because this brutality is not new. This is the last 7,000-8,000 years we have been brutalized. But throughout all of that, there has always been souls who have been sort of ready, but they don't always make it. Because we all have to come into the Maya, we all have to come into the trauma, and we then somehow we require information. It has to come from somewhere. So there's always been a few people on this earth who have carried the torch, they've got so far, but it's further than the rest. So there's always been a few who've kept the torch of understanding, which has not been available to the masses, but has always been there for those few who were ready to open up, to listen, to work, to explore. We're now at a different time. Now there are so many more people who are ready And the good news, according to Charlie, is that 2/3 of humanity will make it, i.e., they will move beyond the ego enough to connect with their hearts. They don't necessarily get rid of all the trauma, because it is Charlie, haven't got it, yeah. Sometime back, a couple of years back, Charlie, he helped me to create a list to work with other people with their emotions. And what we developed was the concept of ego-soul integration. And what that means is that, you see, we are machines. We think we're human beings, but really we're just very clever machines. We're very clever machines with three separate brains that when they're all working together, we have self-awareness. But we're still ego. We're still egocentric. Although it is important and necessary to be fully present here in the moment by having all the three brains working, which are the physical body, the emotional body, and the mental body. So all of them need to be engaged in ourselves right now before we can even proceed to connecting with heart, with this, yeah. So there are levels of integration, and we begin with a lot of trauma, most of us, if not all of us. And well, we don't actually, that's not true. We don't begin with a lot of trauma. We begin fairly cleaning ourselves when we're born, but over the succeeding 8 to 12 years of life through our childhood, trauma occurs in our lives, as a result of which we then begin to wither and become more and more egocentric and closed off, self-centered. And there are gradients of that. And so what we worked out was, well, we didn't work out, what he told me was that up till 20% of integration, we're totally self-focused in ourselves. And narcissistic, sociopathic, all of that, right? All of that is below 20%. And the lower that percentage goes, the more mechanistic and fearful and devious and all of that, like politicians. And not all. There are some politicians who are actually way above the 20% mark. And you are in, I won't mention names, but you are in, what's your country?
In Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. So not far from Bulgaria, there's a country where the three top people are at a level of consciousness of 33 to 35%. Wow. Now the average, the norm is below 20. Wow. Most politicians are way below 20. Most human beings, 98% of the world population, is below 20 or at 20. There are many people who are now moving beyond that self-egocentric, and they're starting to connect with their hearts. And what that means is they're more objective in their outlook. There's a level of objectivity, and they themselves are more integrated. And so they're much more reasonable, and they're more in touch with concepts like loyalty, for example, yeah, and being truthful. So all of these things come as we raise our levels. And so, yes, there are many people who are now beginning to move forward. But the people who are beyond their 20s, they're in their millions, when you think that the world has got 7.5, 7.9 billion people, this is a minuscule amount. The amount of people today who are able to move into their heart, they may not be able to stay there for long because the ego still has a powerful influence and there's still a lot of trauma. But the amount of people who are now able to move into their hearts is beginning to increase. But, you know, like I said, we're talking a very small percentage of the world population. But the good news is that we are at a time when we are ready. And we can see this in the world because people are using the world, people are now using the word to become awake. People say, we're waking up. We're waking up to the lies. We're waking up to the indoctrinations of the powers that be. And we are realizing that there are groups who are invested in maintaining political control, financial control, and they need to control the gateways of information to the public at large. And it's always been like that for thousands of years. Information is power. And they've been shooting themselves in the foot for the last 20 odd years. And more people are waking up to the fact, well, we're being told things which are not true. We're being manipulated to some extent. And it's not a lot, but it's enough. It's enough to begin to question, because we are brought up, we are raised not to question.
Yeah.
Do as you're told. Who hasn't been told that? Do as you're told. We've been told that by parents, we've been told that by teachers, we're told that by governments, we're told by all the powers that be. Do as you're told. And now we come to a world where they're trying to suppress the way we can express ourselves, the way we can express our ideas, because they're desperate to control the narrative and they're finding all means and ways of doing so. So I don't wish to be political because I'm more interested in soul, but this is all part of the narrative of the world we're in.
Yeah.
And so to wake up is a first step. But this is only to wake up to the fact that the world is not as we think it is, and that we need to start questioning. So questioning is the beginning.
Do you feel that in itself will be quite traumatic to fully discover the essence of knowing the truth about their soul purpose? Or will it be a relief, a sigh of relief? I mean, it is. Yeah.
2/3 of the world population are ready. 2/3, okay, 2/3 of the world population are ready. Well, I say 2/3. This isn't 2/3 today. This is 2/3 in the next 20 years. 2/3 are definitely ready. And there is 1/3 who will never be ready. Well, that's not true. Never is a long time, but in this lifetime, they will never be ready in this lifetime. Because their souls are very young. The soul fragments, they haven't had enough experience in a human body. You see, we all need to experience emotional intensity to wake up to the world we're in. We need to be able to experience, because we all suppress emotions. Part of our trauma is to suppress emotions. And by their own definition, once they're suppressed, they're out of our awareness. So we don't even know we're suppressing our emotions. But there's certain emotions that we don't have access to. It could be joy, it could be envy, it could be grief. It doesn't matter what it is. There are certain emotions we don't have access to. And we know that there is something within us. And with all that, with all of that, comes the whole self-love, how we feel about ourselves. So we've got at least 98% of the world population who dislike themselves, who hate themselves, who can't stand themselves, who are highly, highly critical of themselves. But all of this is the job that's been given to, it's been indoctrinated into us, to be filled with rules and regulations for behavior, to be fearful of how others will see us, that we may be ostracized from the group. So all of this is part of what's going on. But a huge percentage, I'll say two-thirds of the world is ready to move beyond. They have the experience from previous lifetimes to work towards something greater. And so these two-thirds, they are dissatisfied, or they will be increasingly become dissatisfied with the world as it is. And this satisfaction is what is pressing them to move outwards to discover information. Unfortunately, and this is the trap, these two-thirds who are ready to move on are now being caught like flies in a honey jar by the disinformation. You see, disinformation is not purely political, it's not purely social, it's also spiritual, it's also religious. Disinformation occurs at every facet of our lives. But deep within us, we know truth when we hear it.
Yeah.
We're just not walking up to it yet. You know, as I'm now practically 70 years old, I have gone through dozens and dozens of groups, spiritual groups, religious groups. I've done it all. Not quite all, but most of it. And as I went through groups, I would then be exposed to different concepts about what the world is, what spirit is, the true nature of reality, according to their perception, their belief. And there's always been something within me that would go, yeah, doesn't quite make sense. Hence, I kept looking, because there was always something that didn't quite make sense. Deep within us, when we've been through a few lifetimes, deep within us, we know something is true when it's true.
Yeah.
But we need to be exposed to that truth, first of all. And we get exposed to flavors of the truth. And so they're very tantalizing. And so we keep searching for that. And it's important not to get stuck, because we can get stuck by flavors of the truth, which are not the truth. I mean, they're good enough, they're good to keep us going, to keep us moving. But we need to stay flexible in our perception and what we believe, and take whatever we hear, even from me, with a pinch of salt. Honestly, we need to truly listen deep down inside us to what is true for us. And always question, where does it come from? Who's told me this? Now, I claim authority because I get it from Charlie. But this is true for me. It may not be true for you. But for me, I can say, well, Charlie helps me when I'm with clients, and he gives me information, regardless of whether next to me or in another part of the world, and it's true. And and we can verify that it actually is happening. So I have he's healed me. He's healed me. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever Charlie says to me is the truth. However, Charlie filters information to me via my ego. And that is always the problem. So even I am doubtful at times of what comes through to me. Now, the only thing going in my favor, as against other people who allow things to come through to them, is that because I rely on a yes and no answer, I always double check and triple check myself. I am looking for consistency. If I ask a question, I always double check. First of all, I ask Eric, my immediate soul, am I actually connected? And sometimes I'm not connected. And Charlie says no, and then I get no answers. So I may trip. And in fact, I do trip. Every now and then I trip. But I don't rely on the answers. I always double check and triple check. And if I'm still not comfortable with the answer, I'll say, okay, I'll come back to this. And then I come back later on and I ask again till I'm satisfied that what has come through to me is real for me, is true. Yeah. And that's a difference. That is a huge difference from most of the psychics out there who, whatever comes through, it's the truth because it's come through them. Yeah, but what about your ego? Your ego is coloring all your perceptions. The information can only come via your ego. So what I've discovered for myself is that my connection with Charlie is only true when I am in my heart. Yeah. So when I am connected in my heart, comes really strong. But if I lose the plot, I become, lost in my head, or, ego comes in whenever you least expect it. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, what percentage of your presence, shall we say, are you sort of centered, like present? Are you sort of like off the mark a bit, or over the years you've obviously more connected to your presence more? You're more comfortable in yourself. So when you're saying,
it's not so straightforward, but I'm not trying to send myself up because I'm really nothing special. I'm ordinary. The only thing about me is I've dealt with my traumas. Okay, that's the only thing that separates me from most people. I've dealt with my traumas. But apart from that, I'm not special. However, from the point of view of connection, my level of ego soul integration is in the top 100 people on this earth, according to Charlie. Okay, according to Charlie. And because the most that is possible for a human being to be is 88.9% of ego soul integration, i.e., there's 88.9% of your soul present at any given moment in time, operating through your heart. Mm-hmm. However, there is no person on this earth who is at this moment in time who is capable of such a feat. Okay, 88.9, because we cannot avoid ego. We need ego. Ego is important to be in the world, and a lot of spiritual people, and I was one of those when I was young, forget this. They, I want to move beyond I want to forget my ego. I don't want to be my ego. No, ego is important because life is about experience. So you want to say something?
No, that's fine. No, that's perfect.
Okay, yeah. So my level and my wife's, we are at, well, actually, she's at 88.5. I'm at 88.7. However, I have been going up and down sometimes. Sometimes, no, you've gone down. But I'm still at a level of over 88. 88.5 is the lowest I seem to go to these days.
What makes? I was going to say, if I may quickly, what brings it down? What kind of distractions, or what do you feel is causing you this? Is the fluctuation an important phenomenon? Is it good? It's doing it. Should it be more like?
It's neither good nor bad. I mean, it's good
Right.
insofar as it shows that I still have something to work with, right? So occasionally, I mean, you know, we're all damaged. You know, I am damaged. Even today, even though I have this level of integration, I'm still damaged. I am damaged by my youth. I'm damaged by my traumas. I've dealt with the traumas, all the biggest for sure, but I'm still hardwired. My machine has been hardwired by my experiences. And so there are times when I make it some anxiety in my ego, in my, you know, the child within me. I'll get some anxiety, and I then have to, okay, connect with the anxiety, let it flow, be there. And occasionally it takes me a couple of days to deal through the anxiety. So I can have moments of fear, and we're all human. We're all in the same boat. But the difference, I suppose, is that I can work my way through it, just let it go. And when that happens, I am aware that this is happening to me. So I am not able to alter. I have to ride it. I have to ride this emotion, which is sending me up. But nevertheless, I work with it, let it go. And that is what sort of moves me up and down. But there's also the issue of all the three brains need to be working in tandem. We have to be in our physical bodies. We have to be in our emotional bodies. We have to be in our emotional body. You know, bodies, centers, brains, call it what you will. It's pretty much the same thing. So we need that sort of integration within ourselves to go to a certain height. But to really clear the decks, we need to let go of all the emotional traumas which are holding us back. It doesn't stop us from reacting. You know, if someone pisses me off, I'll still get angry.
Yeah.
But I won't get angry for very long. You know, it'll be a very little short while and let it go. I can experience envy, greed. I have access to all the emotions. They're all there. They're all available to me. And I can get triggered by all of them. And that is being human. That is being ordinary. And that is what we're supposed to be. Because we're here to experience. Yeah? So having said that, so we've got people who are at the 20% mark. And they need to keep rising. And, you know, there's nothing like having children to open up your heart. And so that begins to really move you beyond 20%. And a lot of parents move beyond that, but that may only take them up to about 25%. They're still egocentric, you know, they're still very needy themselves. And if they don't deal with their own needs, traumas, etc., then that level of heart connection is never very great. So it only remains at a low level. So we need to go higher. And these 2/3 of humanity needs to rise to at least 50%. So this is the challenge that we have today for humanity, that we need to, yeah, go on then.
No, so I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, all right. No, you can't.
I was going to say, what would you say is the ultimate currency to raise, you know, your level of consciousness?
Self-love.
Okay, so rather than me going out of my comfort zone and loving people around me, we're not saying, we're not going to be too harsh, but we're not going to say that's a waste of time. But the ultimate is,
I'm not saying that.
No, but the ultimate is
okay.
Yeah.
To go up the levels.
Yeah.
You see, the world around us is a reflection of the world inside us. Yeah. Everything is a reflection of our internal world. So you speak about loving outside. Well, you can't love outside if you can't love yourself.
Exactly. That resonates.
So the linchpin, the essential aspect is self-love. What I mean by self-love is that we look at ourselves and we see that we're wounded, we see that we're damaged, we see that we're fallible, we see that we can be quite obnoxious. And nevertheless, we say, yeah, this is who I am at the moment. You know, I've got all this damage from my past. This is where I am. And we look at ourselves as though we're looking at a child of ours. At our, you know, like if you have children, you identify with your child, and if they cry, if they're upset, if they're angry, whatever's going on with them, you really focus on them and you empathize with what's happening for them. You're there for them. And we need to do the same for ourselves. We need to look at ourselves and we need to empathize with our sickness, with our meanness, with our nastiness, with our envy, with our jealousy, with everything which is small and mean in a human being. But we need to understand that all of that is within us to a great extent because we don't have enough love in ourselves. We were never loved enough by our parents, by society, by our friends. There was never enough love coming into us when we were young. So as a plant, we're a little plant that grows without enough water. So we grow all gnarled and twisted. Yeah. You know, we weren't irrigated. We didn't have enough sunshine. We didn't have enough nutrients. And so we grow up twisted. And we're like Quasimodo. We need to be able to love the Quasimodo in us because we're all hunchbacked and distorted. We need to love ourselves regardless. There's no other way. There is no other way, because without that central part to ourselves, because we are ego. We are ego. The sooner we get that through our thick heads, we are ego. We are machines. We are complicated machines who are genetically programmed with our DNA. We are mentally programmed by society, by our parents. And then, worst of all, we program ourselves because of the experiences we have as we're growing up in life. And so our mind comes in to protect us. Our minds want to protect us from emotional intensity. Our minds want to protect us from mental conflict. So do as you're told. We criticize ourselves, and our mind suppresses us. It suppresses our emotions from our waking awareness. This is why they're suppressed, because the mind comes in and suppresses the emotions as soon as they arise. We're not even aware. We're not aware that the emotions are rising up. Someone upsets us. What happens? We begin talking to ourselves. All manner of words, what we're going to say, what we did, what we might do. What we're not doing is we're not experiencing the hurt of our emotions.
Yeah.
Because we felt whatever at that moment. And that is the problem with humanity.
Yeah.
And there's only one way forward, because we're all in the same boat. Self-love, self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, and stop lying to yourselves.
Yeah.
We need to be truthful with ourselves. We need to say, I am a fucked up human being. Own it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm mean, I'm miserable, whatever. Own it. Everything you are right now is the result of your past. If you want your future to be different, you need to own in the present everything that's brought you up to the present. From this moment forward, you can work towards being a different person in the future. But right now, own up the fact that you're fucked up as a human being. That goes for all of us. The sooner we take that on board, the sooner we can move forward and connect with our hearts.
Very powerful, brother. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, would you say I've got my own personal intuition on this, and obviously we'll compare notes, but do you think there's the ultimate truth in knowing the essence of your own, shall we say, journey, which is with the struggle has meaning? because a lot of people struggle and they feel it has no meaning. So the struggle is there to make you, not to break you.
Absolutely.
I mean,
The struggle
me,
is there to give you speed velocity. Okay. The struggle for all of us is there so that we experience those conflicts, so that we can come to ourselves, so that we can move beyond our ego, so that we can see ourselves in context.
for a lot of people, I can't speak for a lot of people. I can only take my own. For me, one of the greatest fears was things like sickness. You know, how can one not control it fully, but to neutralize it in such a way that as one gets older, they can be comfortable with the process of so-called aging, so that you're mellow, and you're not seeing it as a disease necessary, because this is a quite a massive debate amongst within the so-called spiritual community. I'm finding that some are saying, you know, it is a disease. Some are saying it's a natural cause. But I think
What is the disease? Could you explain? What is the disease?
reference to the aging process, as
Oh,
we will
aging.
wiltering. You know, we're not like 20. I mean,
Hey, I'm 70. What can I say?
you don't look. You're having us on, but anyways. But what I'm saying, I mean, age is just a number, but it is a bit of a little reminder for some, because if we're going by the so-called life expectancy, which is a form of programming in itself, people say, oh, the average lifespan, depending geographically where you're living, and your attitude and your lifestyle, you know, and of course things are in your DNA as well, blah blah blah, if you energize those. But let's just say the average person lives to 75, 80, pushing it to 85. And my granddad made it to 90, 96, 97.
That's
But
good.
in the end, he died of a broken heart. I mean, you know, it was like, as one gets older, it's like, you know, there's a tendency, you do slow down. And I mean, there are many variables that are causing this, but I'd like to be very positive, as always. Of course, there's positive and negative, and being neutral.
Sure.
Because I take it, we both agree that no two souls are the same. They're not of the same frequency. So each one is sort of, as you said earlier in our conversation, that some souls are pretty young and less evolved, because in the form of a human, they're not traveled enough, for example. So if you're going to categorize them, then obviously they, not being mean, what you're saying in not so many words, is they need to go through more hardship, if you like, so that they can.
And they may not succeed in this lifetime.
Yeah, but is it possible that more advanced, progressed souls can help them to evolve? Sorry to use the word faster. Is there such a thing as faster, and avoid the unnecessary grief?
Well, that used to be true.
Right.
But we have to go into the past.
Okay.
Before the last cataclysm, 13,500 years ago, give or take, humanity at the time, and we're only talking a maximum of 100 million people worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So there weren't that many people, but most of humanity, they had been going through various lifetimes, and they had been helped because the percentage of young souls coming in compared to the percentage of souls, which, bear in mind, in those days they were not indoctrinated in any way, they were not traumatized like we have been this past 7,000-8,000 years. The adults were able to not to hide, but to help their youngsters to grow with love, with kindness. They had a different role model. They were connected to nature. They were connected to the world. It was a totally different way of life from what we have now, from what we've had over the last 7,000-8,000 years, where we've had brutality, what do you call it? When you kill people as a sacrifices, they've been sacrificed. So you have brutality, sacrifices to the gods or whatever, slavery, we've butchering left, right, and center. This is the age of darkness, literally. And before that, the healing arts were more evolved. People had a greater understanding. There were more adults in the room than at the moment. At the moment, there's very few adults in the room. Okay, most of the world could be considered children. There's very few adults in the room, and I consider myself a teenager. So I haven't quite made it to adults. I'm just a teenager.
That's why you look so young.
So yes, there were young souls coming in. They were narcissistic, sociopathic, but they were, compared to the group, they were few in numbers, and they were always kept in check, and they were taught as best as was possible at the time. But these young souls were not taken seriously enough so that they could occupy positions of power. No one would listen to them in that way. And they would not be tolerated. Their cruelty would not be tolerated. In these times of darkness, the ones who've risen to the top, the cream, is those who are ready and willing to commit any brutality, any atrocity. They're the ones who make it to the top. And so the world has become topsy-turvy. Those of us who are more connected, who just want to get on with life and enjoy our life and simply experience life, experience relationships, family, etc., we're at the bottom. But the ones who have a thirst to control, for power, who will lie and cheat and do whatever it takes to get to the top of the greasy pole, they are the ones who for thousands of years have found their way to the top. And they're only able to stay at the top because they're totally ruthless. Because the rest of them up there with them, they're totally ruthless. So unless you're more ruthless than the other ones, you've had it. So unfortunately, this is where we're at, okay? And that has to change.
Yeah. Reference to the schooling systems that are in place. I mean, obviously, going back a few hundred years, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it only really kicked off during the Industrial Revolution. Prior to that, I don't think there was a thing called schools. And do you feel that that's been like a bit of a disability for humanity to? I mean, if you were to ask Charlie a question right now, reference to what will happen to the schooling system? And may I ask your opinion beforehand as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, in my opinion,
what is a school? What is the purpose of a school?
The school system is to indoctrinate us to obey and do what we're told and do a little menial job that will bring in the money.
So okay. I take that as not such a good thing then.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
We are controlled by experts, and these experts, they've screwed up history because their ego lies and cheats. They want to send themselves up. They want to be someone special, and so they control because their own egocentric beliefs used to be religious ones. In terms of history, we've got forbidden archaeology, which has evolved because the mainstream would not contemplate such a possibility that human beings could have been alive more than 20,000, 40,000, 100,000 years ago. So, and I mean, this has been changing, but nevertheless, you take the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages, when what was his name? This guy who said that the Earth was not the center of the universe, but rather it revolved around the sun. So what happened? Recant or we kill you. Yeah, the Catholic Church at the time, Galileo. So the Catholic Church at the time said, this is the truth, and if you give a different version, we will kill you for heresy. Later on, the flat Earth, same thing. I don't want to sort of get into that about the flat Earth people, but it's the same thing. There's all these belief systems, and people inculcate them.
Can we start putting some very powerful information out? If it resonates with you, I'd like to invite you again in the very near future so that we can do a succession of very positive messages out there. But if we were to ask Charlie reference to where this planet is, and where would we put like figures and numbers and
what is it you want to know?
Well, how far away? Yeah, because a lot of people are very fearful with, I'll use the banking system at the moment because I'm hearing it, incredible information coming my way. Some are saying like as early as June, it's been on borrowed time, reference to a collapse, okay, of a system that needs to be radically replaced. Now, I'm also with a particular movement. It's called the Global People's Monetary System and Simplified Divine Plan. I've never shared this with you, but I'd be happy to do so. But we could ask. We're going with the flow. We could ask Charlie reference to another divine plan in place, or do you feel
that I've already got a sort of divine plan? Part of the reason why I'm here speaking with you is because I am a messenger of events to come.
Okay.
But the purpose of Charlie is to help to raise the consciousness of mankind. Okay, that's what we're here for. We're here to raise the level. Now, when you speak of the monetary system, you're speaking of the outside world. And the outside world is always a reflection of the internal world. The more human beings who become free in themselves, who raise their own ego soul integration, as they go up, they begin to have an effect on the collective. You cannot change the collective for the better from the outside. People have tried this for the last 100 odd years, 200 years, 300 years. It never works out because ego will always have the last word. So to change, we need to begin to change internally. And this is the true revolution. And with this revolution of internal change, so our economic system will change, because the internal world is one of abundance.
Yes.
but that requires love.
Mm.
Okay? There is no abundance in the outside world, not because there isn't overabundance, which clearly there is. There is abundance in the universe. The universe is super abundant in energy. Everything is energy. It's everywhere. You know, I mean, like from your toes to the top of your head, there is about 1,000,000 volts differential. 1,000,000 volts differential. That is energy, right?
Yeah.
Energy is all around us.
Yeah.
However, to have energy accessible, that is a reflection of our internal world. And people do not have an excess of energy. People are forever trying to chase the next pound, the next Kruger, the next whatever.
Yeah.
We are needy. We are desperate for energy. We are vampires because we don't have enough love in ourselves. We don't love ourselves.
Yes.
And if we don't love ourselves, how can anyone else love us? So what do? We're forever looking for relationships where people will love me.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, if you want to equate that to abundance of energy, you're in bondage. You're in slavery. You're in debt. You're totally indebted in yourself. So if you're indebted within yourself, if you don't have enough within yourself, how on earth can you expect the world to reflect abundance? I'll give you a very simple example of this that just occurred to me. Coffee. People drink coffee,
Yes.
okay, in huge amounts all over the world. Coffee is a seed which contains a poison. The poison created by this seed is designed to destroy any insects that come and have a munchie.
Wow.
That's why they do it.
Mm.
It's a protective mechanism. Now, it's a disruptor. Now, people drink this coffee and it disrupts their adrenals. And what happens is it now sets up a system of debt. So that individual is now in a constant state of debt because, first of all, they take the coffee and they've now borrowed from the outside to give them the energy. The coffee, the whatever you call it, that's in the coffee, the adrenaline. Well, what I can't think what it's called right now,
Like the
but
caffeine.
it comes with the what?
Sorry, I was disrupted you with the word caffeine, but it's nothing to do with that.
No, it's not caffeine. Caffeine comes from coffee. I don't know if it's right now. I don't know because I'm in a particular flow, and my left and right brains don't work very well. Anyway, so so they drink this, and it puts their adrenals into overdrive.
Mm.
So now the amount of adrenaline that the body would have used up during that 24 hours is used up in 2 minutes flat. 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So now suddenly, yeah, I feel great. Suddenly I can go to work. I'm fully awake now. And then by the next day, so they need to take another coffee. And after a while, they find that they need to have more than one coffee. Now they need to have 2 coffees. Keep going over the years, maybe then it becomes 3 coffees. So they're in a continuous state of debt, each time borrowing more and more just to stand still. All right. So this is a reflection of how we are slaves, how we indebt ourselves financially, energetically, chemically, in relationships. We do it in every facet of our lives. We need to come to a place of abundance if we want to change the world. And we can only come to a place of abundance with self-love. Okay?
So basically, it is definitely a state of mind. It's not like you build a mountain of gold. It is within yourself, and this ability, because like I've been operating personally myself, I've been operating now from abundance for many years. I don't do scarcity, and my day begins with thank you. and with incredible amount of gratitude, so blessed. So as I've got so much abundance, I share, and I'm not chasing money, profit. I genuinely give to people, and there is an element of appreciation. So I feel that that's a fantastic foundation. That's a great place to begin the exercise. Would you agree with that, or
Yes and no.
okay?
I agree that gratitude is very, very important.
Yeah.
But I still maintain that before you can have gratitude,
Hmm.
you've got to have self-acceptance.
Okay.
You've got to accept yourself, warts and all. You need to accept where you're at and be grateful for where you're at. So
Yes.
if you're poor, well, be grateful for the small positive things. Be grateful that other people have got wealth. It doesn't matter how you do it, but just be grateful. Find little things to be grateful for. Be grateful for the fact you're alive. Be
Yeah.
grateful for the fact that you've got a relationship with someone and that you can feel for them. You have to do it yourself, but there's just so many things to be grateful for. But it begins with self-acceptance. Yeah.
Very good, brother. Very, very good. So do you feel with the process of how the soul is evolving, do you feel that like you were saying, now humanity is coming to a place of recognizing the amount of abuse emotionally, mentally, in every conceivable way? Do you feel that there's a lot of truth in respect to? Let me use one example, like chemtrails, for example, because that's been a very powerful theme for in terms of how humanity's been being poisoned by certain types of toxins that were being put. Would you say there's some truth in that, or do you think it's utter rubbish?
Um, Chemtrails have been around for about 15, 20 years, if not more.
Okay.
And initially, there were many companies playing with this
Right.
for financial gain. And I believe that now there's very few companies. Gradually they got bought, and now there's a few. Bill Gates, for example, is a major shareholder in some of these companies. And what I noticed many years ago was that these chemtrails seemed to be collecting in areas where there were high populations.
Uh-huh.
And if the idea of the chemtrails is to cool the earth, then they don't stand a chance in heaven. If the idea of the chemtrails is to alter the weather, they're clearly doing that, but they're not changing global weather, they're changing local weathers. And, it really is important to see ourselves in the context of the earth. We see ourselves as being bigger than life, all of us, collectively. You see, we got the internet. I'm connected to people all over the world. The world's become very small. No, we think the world's become very small. We're still little ants. Like the whole world population could fit inside Texas. And the whole of the landmass of the earth, this is the landmass of the earth, is only about 30% of the whole world, because 70% of that is water.
Yeah.
So the landmass is a very small proportion of the earth, and the amount of human beings is a very, very, very small proportion of all the landmass. But we just happen to be dispersed a bit, and now we've got the internet. But even though we're 7 nearly 8 billion people. In relation to the whole Earth, we're not that many. We don't take that much space. And so our ability to alter the weather patterns of the Earth is minuscule at best and laughable at most. So these contrails, in my opinion, the purpose is, and I have verified this with Charlie, is to affect the weather locally, to give us the impression that there is climate change.
Wow.
Because when you have all these clouds,
Yeah.
what they do is they keep the heat in.
Yeah.
So you got to think, well, hold on a minute. The whole purpose of climate change, they're telling us, is because the weather's getting hotter. So why are you putting clouds, which is going to make it even more hot? Look at Venus. Venus is a very hot planet, closer to the sun, but because of the clouds, their temperature is way higher than here. We're talking 300 centigrade plus, whatever it is. So what clouds do is they keep heat in. They don't cool. Clouds don't cool a place. They make it hotter. So anyway, as far as chemtrails are concerned, it is a nefarious activity. But the bigger issue is, who are these people?
Yeah.
What gives them the right
Who are
to
they,
throw
Bob?
all these poisons?
Who are the so-called controllers? I mean, what kind of bloodline, what kind of people are we talking about? I mean, would one be able?
Psychopaths. We're talking psychopaths.
I know,
The psychopaths have always been on top, okay, for the last 8,000 years. They found their way to the top and they stayed there. And generation after generation, they give a leg up to those who are like them, because psychopaths rely on ruthless people to control the rest.
Would you say, in your opinion, Charlie's beautiful presence, do you think their days are numbered? I mean, are we talking like a year away, 6 months away, 5 years away, 10 years away, where they're no longer going to impede on the freedom of others the way they've been doing, orchestrating?
Well, this will depend on to what extent we open up our hearts.
Okay.
You see, the biggest con job on this planet at the moment is that because the psychopaths are on top,
yeah,
and because they are able, through their minions, to keep everyone traumatized, and because a good third of the population is very young and incapable of moving to a place beyond their ego, to a place of heart, because they're just lost in fear, they are creating a collective reality which reflects the lowest common denominator. And they have, what's the word? When someone doesn't, you say, who volunteers, okay? But nobody volunteers. So then they say, right, you, and you bring them forward. So there's a word for that, they conscripted. So most of humanity, most of the people who have the potential, the willingness, and the ready to move on, to raise in their level of soul integration, these people have been conscripted into the fear mode of generating the reality of the lowest common denominator. And this is what is beginning to change. This is why they've now see themselves, oh, we're waking up, we're awake. No, they're not awake, but they are waking up. We're waking up So these people who are waking up, all they're waking up to is the disinformation, to the indoctrinations. And this is the beginning of the change that will allow us to alter collective reality. How long will that take? I don't know. All I can tell you is that my journey with Charlie is to generate, this is just me, other people will do other things, at least 1 million people who will open up their hearts within the next 7 years. 7 years. And all I can say from my own personal ego place is that when we open up our hearts, our power to create reality increases more than 100-fold.
Yeah.
More than 1,000-fold, even.
Beautifully said, brother. Beautifully said. And with reference to the Corona situation that lasted for over 2 years or so, I mean, I like to think they didn't succeed in any shape or form. They tried profusively to alter the DNA and stuff, and maybe to a point they succeeded with some. But in your opinion, what was that all about?
I did ask Charlie about this, and I've written articles on my website. And this is a long story in its own right.
Okay, maybe.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, which doesn't do a lot of justice, but just to, and we could devote some more time. And
in a nutshell, the whole purpose of it was to tag people and to take their DNA.
Right.
Because there are aliens involved in the story. And the DNA is for the aliens.
Wow.
Okay. But the aliens are good.
Okay.
These aliens, they're not the aliens, but they're an alien race who've been coming here since the late 60s, and they're okay.
Angelic.
No, they're just ordinary aliens. They're just ordinary. They're just ordinary aliens. They've got an average level of ego soul integration of around 35. Okay. So compared to human beings, they're great. And they're wise enough to know that they don't really want to have that much to do with us. And they know something's going to happen, and they want our DNA for a very good reason. And perhaps we could talk about this next time.
That would be fantastic, bro. That would be fantastic. Well, we've just passed the hour and 20 at the moment, but if you feel that you want to continue a bit more, I'd be honored. If you feel that you want to,
we can go a little bit more. Yeah, I need to go and spend some time with my wife, at least by 8 o'clock my time.
Nice,
so
I mean, it's like, what other questions can we put forward? So that was, that's a very positive. So that's reference to the DNA aspect. So I'm going to move on. But that's
okay.
Fascinating what you just said. So they've extracted basically information out of us.
Every time they stuck something up your nose, they took DNA sample.
Thank you for that, because I've been hearing it. I'm very neutral. I stay neutral. I mean, see, another thing about me, as you get to know me, I'm not worried about being open. Some people say you should protect yourself. Protect myself from what?
No, it's not that. We do need to be careful because we want to be able to connect with as many people as possible. Yeah, and the powers that be at the moment, they are the gateway to information. Right. So if we're not careful the way we speak, we can be censored.
But that's it. No. They're not going to hang us or anything. They just
no. But there are financial elements at stake, and
Sorry, brother, I interrupted you. You didn't quite finish yours. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Go.
I was going to say, with reference to like with the viruses and things. I mean, do viruses exist within ourselves, but not outside of ourselves? So this thing about giving to each other is just ridiculous. But if we empower the fact that yes, you energize something, you trigger something inside of yourself that's dormant, right? So something can explode inside of you through the fear of being worried and scared. You could cause harm inside of yourself worrying about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Come see, come saw a bit there. I mean, I don't know.
All right. Human beings, we're machines. We're complex machines. We've got an immune system, which is like the army.
Yeah.
And we exist in a soup of funguses, bacteria, pathogens of all sorts, right?
Yeah.
It's how it is.
Yeah.
And we occasionally come across something new,
Yeah.
and our immune system needs to fight it.
Yeah.
And our immune system fights whatever's coming in invariably by giving us a temperature.
Mhm.
So having a temperature is the body telling us
Right.
something's coming from outside, the army is being mobilized.
Yeah.
The army, the white cells, works more effectively the higher our temperature.
Yes.
Because the higher our temperature, the pathogens from outside, they become more dormant and less able to replicate.
Yeah.
So we know that something from outside has come in because we've developed a temperature. Now, people think a temperature is bad, but they have misunderstood and they have been seduced by Western medicine.
Yes.
Temperatures are good. What is bad is if your head overheats, not the body. So if you've got anyone with a temperature, you keep the body hot, but you keep the head cool. You keep cooling it constantly with wet cloths all the time. You keep the neck cool. Yeah, the neck, the back of the head, all of that. You just keep putting clothes, you keep wetting it. It requires someone being with you 24/7 to stop the temperature from going into your head. So that is the basic essential. Okay. What they do these days is they give you drugs to suppress having a temperature, and the drugs they give you usually damage your liver. So there's always a Faustian bargain to be had when you deal with Western medicine. You're supping with the devil. They give you something to help you, but then they're going to take your soul, right? They're going to make you sicker, because that is they give you things that contain side effects.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. So from the point of view of what happens to us, is there such a thing as viruses? Now, we know David Icke was one of the first ones to come forward out there, says, this is nonsense. I've spoken with various people who've told me that there's no such thing as viruses. And then you've had other people who say, actually, yes, there are such things as viruses. None of us have seen a virus. All we've seen is computer models of viruses. So talking about this beer beginning with C, no one has actually seen it. If they have, they haven't told us. They haven't shared it with the rest of the world, okay? All these people who claim to have done research, there's in Spain, in Canada, some of them said, right, prove it. Prove that this exists. And they couldn't come up with the evidence. So is there such a thing? We don't know. Mike Eden says, well, actually, there is such a thing. I don't know that he's seen it. I think because he's a scientist and he's very good in so many ways, but I don't know if he's drinking the Kool-Aid or not. So anyway, at the end of the day, I said to myself, Do viruses exist? Is the story I've been told about viruses, is it real? So I asked Charlie, final arbiter. And this is his summation. And when he told me, it irritated me no end. Because what he said is, because I had gone to Kenya and I came back at the end of December 2019. And I was ill in bed for a month with temperatures and everything else. And I've since caught it another couple of times. And, you know, it's no biggie. I've dealt with it. So I asked Charlie, I said, what is this? Was this a virus? And he emphatically said to me, no, there is no such thing as viruses. It is a pathogen.
Yeah, I agree.
What's a pathogen? So I said, well, what's the size of this pathogen? So he says, well, it's nearly the size of a mythical virus, but it is a living thing. It's a pathogen.
Yeah.
So
You can get it from the flies, mosquitoes, from the water. It's you know, for it to be airborne, unless the artificial because they're so good at mimicking and synthetic things, they create all these nano whatever, which is, I don't know if it's true or not, but they can create anything, can't they, these days, that can make it look like a virus. I don't know. They've got, you
we
know what I
don't
mean?
even know what a virus is, right? All we know is that they talk about proteins, the
Well,
way
it's
that
supposed to
proteins
be
link together.
the air that you breathe, and I'm thinking, what's the problem with, you know? No,
I
I think
think the bottom line is that what I experienced 3 times,
yeah.
I can categorically state I have never experienced anything like that before in my life.
Wow.
And that what I experienced was not natural. It was
Wow.
not a natural thing that one caught from other people just like that.
Right.
This was created. Whatever it is, was created.
With electromagnetic fields that they have, possibly, because it's like the fields of radio. I've looked into the frequencies that they can send, transmit. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but they can even they can control the crowds to behave in a certain way. Like they can get them to be a bit more violent if they want to. They could send
Yeah.
frequency. I don't know
I
if it's
think you're now mixing concepts. You're talking about 5G, I believe, and you're
yeah.
talking about the microwave frequencies, which has been created by the military in various countries, and it has been used in crowds. They've used it in Australia. I don't know if they've used it in England, but they've used it in America, and this is quite destabilizing, and it certainly disperses crowds very quickly.
Yeah.
We know that David Icke, he became a proponent of 5G, as this is what's creating all these so-called influenza-like symptoms like thing in the beginning. I don't think that is true, but as far as 5G is concerned, I did ask Charlie, and this is the information that Charlie shared with me, that if you have because we are all electrical creatures, electricity is everything. Our whole bodies, all our atoms, all our cells, it's all about electricity. The solar system, the way it interacts, it's all about electricity. The universe, it's all electricity. Everything is electricity, okay? And 5G has the power to damage all animal and human and insect life. So 5G is deadly, not overnight, but over a period of time, it is highly, highly damaging to human beings. However, if you have a healthy immune system, 2G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, they're fine. There are people who are affected by electromagnetic radiation that comes out from various electrical things, but that is because they themselves are destabilized internally. But for the average healthy person, they will not be affected by Wi-Fi to phones up to 4G. None of that is not serious. It's not, you wouldn't have it next to your head all the time. That's ridiculous. But at normal distances, they're fine. But 5G is totally different. 5G is deadly. And whatever's going on with 5G is something that needs to be altered. It needs to be changed because the effects on human beings are, well, actually not just human beings, all insect life,
all
bird
organisms,
life, anything that hangs around them. Yeah. So anyway, like I say, I'm not a political being. I leave that to other people. My realm is the realm of the heart. That's what I'm interested in.
Yes,
consciousness.
Absolutely, brother. And just coming back to David Icke, because I met David Icke many years ago. I went to one of the conferences that he held in 2012. Remember who you are. That was very powerful. 10 hours, I think, workshop which he did. Do you feel that his representation of truth is authentic from your interpretation? Would you say it's
his
up
representation
there?
of truth is partly authentic?
Partly.
He is a very important person.
Okay.
For this 21st century. He is a messenger.
Yeah.
Like I am. But he's a messenger. When I say a messenger, I mean he's been born into this world, into this life, precisely to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
However, his information has come from other people and from books.
Yeah.
And his intuition, he trusts himself to meet the right person at the right time.
Yes.
And then they bring him information and then he follows that. And that is very laudable because that is the only way to move forward. However, from my perspective and from Charlie's perspective, from what he shared with me, there's no such thing as reptiles, okay? What he calls reptilians, I call psychopaths.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, what he calls bloodlines, I just call the psychopaths, the people who have found the way to the top, low level of soul development, but from birth, they sort of navigate and they find their way straight to this area, and they're very well sought after for a whole variety of reasons, and they end up at the top. Or they end up being the ones, lost connection for a second. So they end up being the ones who keep everybody else in check. So I personally enjoy David Icke. I like him. But some of what he has to share, he's an amazing, what's the word? He's like a ferret, the way he can go and gain information. He's an amazing researcher. Yeah, his capacity for research is incredible. And I really admire him for his dedication, his tenacity. He's amazing. He is an amazing guy. And he has made a lot of mistakes by following information which at the time seemed to be good. And I mean, for example, he speaks of there's one bit of information which is really important, which is to do with the genies, what did he call them? They come from the Gnostic. He's got I can't think what they're called now, but he's got a name for these people, not people, these soul fragments that I call the critters, and that he calls what does he call them? Everyone else listening is going to say, it's called this, it's called this. But anyway, but this is an entity that affects human beings because it feeds on fear. And it feeds especially on those people who have a very low level of soul integration and who possesses those people whose level of soul integration is around 5%. These are shells of human beings who are easily blackmailed, manipulated because of their sexual proclivities, as well as being caught with the fingers in the till in all manners of places. And these people end up in positions of power, but then they're the puppets for puppeteers behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so both he and I agree that there is this force, this energy that affects people at a fear level.
Yeah.
And it is something to be aware of, certainly during the times of the new moon and the full moon. We can talk more about that another time as well.
Sure.
I can tell you about the story, how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, would you be okay, like, if we brought some names into the context of our conversation and say of their percentage where they're at and their purity towards humanity? Do you feel that will help people to help navigate? Or would you
I don't know. I don't know. I will consult with Charlie on that, because sometimes that is none of my business or anybody else's business.
Yeah.
I mean, I ask questions and he gives me information, but some of that is private.
Sure.
Sometimes, I mean, I gave you a strong clue at the very beginning when I was talking about this Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And because if you heard what I said, if you listen to that carefully again, it tells you in terms of world politics,
yes,
who are the ones to listen to.
Right.
Okay. I'll say no more on that score.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. I mean, it's really comforting to know that people like you exist. It's always an honor to be in your beautiful company. So I will reach out to you in due course, and
Sure.
We'll have a little conversation as to the title of our next one, which I think more or less we know what it is, but we'll, if it still resonates, which I feel it will.
No, I'm more than happy. Thank you for giving me a platform to speak.
Thank you, brother.
Let me share with people who might be listening.
Yes.
That I do have a Telegram group where people can come and join conversations, listen to what I have to share. All my podcasts, my articles, I always put them in there so that people know something's come up. I've got a YouTube channel where all my podcasts are. There's over 60 of them now. I've got a Facebook page, but frankly, I would prefer people did not join my Facebook page, because I'll be honest, I don't like Facebook. It is a necessary evil to be able to engage in, to reach important people who need to hear these words. but I much prefer to engage with people via Telegram.
Okay.
For communication purposes, if people, anyway.
Fantastic.
So
brother.
perhaps you could sort of put a link to my
Yeah.
various at the
Certainly.
bottom, whenever.
We'll do
That would
so.
be very nice.
Okay, brother. Thank you
And
very Yeah.
I'm here for you whenever. Just give me a shout.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Lovely to speak with you. You take
Always.
care.
Take care.
Bye
Bioactivate.
for now, Baret.
Bioactivator would like to thank you for your kind support and donations. Through Baret Tunyan's guardianship of this platform, his activation of truth harmonizes, neutralizes, and unblocks the meridians that connect, balance, and purify all that comes in contact. Do no harm is the key that fully opens the heart's voice to be in the union of the I Am presence, and will represent every living organism on the planet whose voice would otherwise not be heard. Remember, the truth will set you free. Do no harm, cause no loss, and do not impose upon the freedom of others. Love, light, and